Welcome back. We are doing Unit 1, Lesson 4, Video 3. We are still doing I can determine and create equivalent fractions by using a variety of strategies to compare fractions. Now we are going to look at special cases. Special cases when your fractions are near a benchmark like a half or a whole. So let's take a look at it. Let me scooch you in a little bit more. And let's crank that down. Hopefully I can keep that glare down as much as possible. All right, so we're talking now comparing fractions using benchmarks. And for fractions, when we're talking benchmarks, we're talking one half and one whole. As you work with fractions, you should become familiar with about what is a half. So let's say we're comparing 5/8 compared to 2/5. So what is a half in eighths? 1/2 in eighths. Half of 8 is 4. So where would 5/8 be? 5/8 would be 1/8 greater than half. Now 2/5. Well, what's half in fifths? Well, half of 5 is a little bit harder to figure out. Think of in between. 5 is in between 4 and 6. Half of 4 is 2. Half of 6 is 3. So half of 5 is in between 2 and 3, or basically 2 and 5/10. So 2/5 is less than 2 and 5/10 fifths. It's 5/10 of a fifth less. So 2 and 5/10 is here. 5/8 is here.
Call from Cadbury.
Because 5/8 is greater than a half, it must be greater than 2/5. Since this is greater than a half and this is less than a half, 5/8 is greater than 2/5. All right, let's take a look at another one that's close to a half. All right, let's say we have 7/12 compared to 1/3. So let's think of what is a half. So I'm going to think in my head, what is 1/2? Half of 12 is 6. Half of 3, again, it's in between. 3 is in between 2, which half of 2 is 1, and 4, which half of 2 is, or 4 is 2. So right in between 1 and 2 would be 1 and 5/10. So 7/12 would be somewhere up here. 1/12 greater than a half. So in my head, I'm just thinking 7/12 is greater than 1/2. And half of 1/3, or 1/3, is a half of a third less than a half, or here. So all I'm thinking in my head is 1/3 is less than half. Since 7/12 is greater than a half and 1/3 is less than a half, 7/12 is greater than 1/3. So I use the benchmark 1/2 as my benchmark, basically, to decide. Since it's greater than a half, less than a half, it has to be greater than 1/3. The next special case to use benchmarks for is when your fractions are near a whole. They're a little bit easier to even pick out. Let's say we have the fractions 5/6 compared to 6/7. I know these are both close to a whole because it's one, the numerator is one less than the denominator. The numerator is one less than the denominator. This one really only works when both of them are just one away from being a whole. Now, as we look at it, I know that 1/6 larger denominator or smaller denominator, larger pieces. 1/6, going back 1/6 from a whole, is a greater distance than going back 1/7 from a whole. Because if I partition into 6 equal pieces, the pieces are going to be larger than if I partition into 7 pieces. They're going to be smaller. So 5/6 is further from a whole than 6/7 is, so it is less. It's closer to 0 or further from one whole. It is less than 6/7. You might need to watch this video a couple times to get this understanding. We do a lot of discussion live. We would do a lot of discussion on that. I would have students do a lot of examples. All right. Let's say I have 8/9 compared to 7/8. Again, I can use the benchmark 1 because both are 1 unit fraction away from being a whole. 8/9 is 1/9 from a whole. So I'm going to go back 1/9 to go here for 8/9. Now 7/8. An 1/8 is larger than a 9th because I have fewer pieces, the pieces are larger. So 7/8 goes back 1/8 from a whole. Since it goes further back or closer to 0, eight ninths is greater than 7/8, or 7/8 is less than 8/9. All right. So what you have to do is figure out how far from a whole. An 1/8 goes further from a whole than a 9th because 8ths, bigger number denominator, or smaller number denominator, bigger pieces. Bigger number denominator, smaller pieces. All right. Good luck with these special cases of being near a benchmark, being near a half or a whole. I know these are 1 unit fraction away from a whole because the difference between the numerator and denominator is 1. All right. Good luck.